Every story has four questions: who, what, when, why. This is the 4Ws explained.
All right, let's talk about something that, well, it just doesn't seem to make any sense, right? It's a huge economic puzzle. Imagine a country that can just print trillions of dollars, basically out of nowhere, and yet its currency doesn't collapse. How is that possible? I mean, we've all seen it. Whenever there's a crisis, the US government fires up the printing presses. We're talking about staggering amounts of money. Now, for pretty much any other country on Earth, doing this is like economic suicide. It's a textbook recipe for disaster. Their currency would spiral and their economy would tank. We've seen it happen time and time again. But the US dollar? It's different. It just keeps chugging along. Financial meltdowns, global pandemics, major wars. Not only does it survive, sometimes it actually gets stronger while everything else is falling apart. So why? What is going on here? That's the huge question we're going to unpack. Why does the dollar get to play by a totally different set of rules? Okay, so first things first. Before we can figure out why the dollar doesn't crash, we kind of have to agree on what a currency crash actually looks like. Yeah, a crash isn't just, a bad day on the stock market. We are talking about a complete and total meltdown. The money in your wallet becomes worthless fast. Prices for things like bread and milk just explode. That's hyperinflation. And maybe most importantly, nobody, and I mean nobody, inside or outside the country trusts the currency anymore. And this isn't some abstract economic theory, right? This is real life. You look at places like Zimbabwe, where they were literally printing $100 trillion bills that were worthless. Or Venezuela and Argentina, where people's life savings were just gone, wiped out overnight. It's a nightmare. So where does the dollar get this superpower? Well, and this is the crazy part, the first big reason has almost nothing to do with America itself. It's all about the rest of the world. I mean, just take a look at this. Nearly 60% of all the money that central banks around the world hold in their savings, it's in US dollars. That is just mind-blowing dominance. The dollar isn't just America's money. For all practical purposes, it's the world's money. And that's not just some number on a chart. It has huge, real-world consequences. When Germany buys cars from Japan, they often do the deal in dollars. And here's the big one, oil. Pretty much all oil traded globally is priced in dollars. So if you're a country and you need to buy oil to power your cities, you absolutely need to get your hands on US dollars first. So what does all this mean? It means there's this constant, never-ending, built-in demand for dollars. Everybody needs them, all the time, no matter what. And that demand acts like a giant cushion, a massive shock absorber that protects the dollar's value. All right, so that's pillar number one. The whole world needs dollars. But what about pillar number two? For that, we gotta look back inside the US and see the sheer economic muscle it has. I mean, think about it. It is, by far, the biggest economy on the planet. It's got the most powerful military in the world to protect its trade and interests. It has the wealthiest consumers who buy stuff from everywhere. And you've got Wall Street, the deepest, most stable financial markets anywhere. And all of that strength leads to this really weird, backwards-sounding thing called a flight to safety. Basically, when the rest of the world gets chaotic and scary, money doesn't run away from America, it runs towards it. Investors around the globe see the US as the safest place to park their cash until the storm passes. We saw this happen right at the start of the COVID pandemic. The whole world was panicking, markets were crashing, and what happened to the dollar? It actually got stronger. People rushed to buy US bonds and dollars. So weirdly enough, a global crisis often helps the dollar. Okay, I can hear you shouting at the screen right now. But what about the debt? All that money they owe, right? The giant, scary mountain of US national debt. Yeah, that number, over $30 trillion. And it just keeps going up. For any normal country, a number like that spells doom, absolute disaster. So why isn't it a disaster for the US? How can an economy possibly handle a debt that big without just completely imploding? Well, it comes down to a few kind of sneaky but super important advantages. First, almost all of that debt is owed in its own currency, dollars. So if worse comes to worst, the US can technically just print the money to pay its bills. And second, the whole world still believes that US government bonds are the safest possible investment you can make. As long as everyone trusts them, the system keeps working. So all of this leads to the big final question. Is this going to last forever? Is the dollar really untouchable, or could its reign actually come to an end one day? For the dollar's world to actually fall apart, you'd need a perfect storm. First, you'd need a new champion, some other currency that's just as strong and trusted. Then, global faith in America's ability to run its economy and pay its bills would have to completely evaporate. And finally, countries would have to start making a real effort to trade big things, like oil, in something other than dollars. But here's the bottom line. Right now, today, there's just no one else who can do the job. The euro has its own set of problems, and other currencies like China's yuan aren't trusted enough or open enough yet. So for now, the dollar is still the only real option on the table. And that really gets to the heart of it all. This is probably the most important thing to understand. The dollar isn't the king because the US economy is perfect. Far from it. It's the king because the entire global financial system has been built around it. And if it were to fall, it would take everyone else down with it. But it does leave you wondering, doesn't it? Nothing lasts forever. If the day ever comes when the world finds a new system, a new way of doing business, and decides to walk away from the dollar, what happens then?